Hoy vamos a estudiar los nombres de los libros de la Torá. El primero se llama Bereshit. Con el Principado los cielos y tierra creó. El segundo se llama Shemot. Son los nombres de los hijos de Israel que a Egipto descendieron y luego Elohim los liberó. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. El tercero se llama Baikra. El Eterno llamó a Moisés, pues quería acercarse al pueblo de Israel. El cuarto se llama Bemidbar. En la estepa Israel peregrinó y muchas pruebas pasaron ahí, pero el Eterno nunca los dejó. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. El quinto se llama Devarim. Son las palabras que el Eterno repitió a una nueva generación, y así en su tierra pudieran habitar. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. La Torá es un regalo del Eterno para estudiar. Tiene muchos tesoros que encontrar. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá. Vamos todos a estudiar la Torá.
Hello, nuevo niños. Presents my little Manna. Shabbat shalom. Shalom. Very good morning, afternoon, or night in the place where you live, little friends. We hope you're having a blessed Shabbat with your family. Today is our 7th installment of the series called My Little Manna. Thank you for participating. Let's say hello, then to the announcements. Shalom to Shirley Miranda, Jessica Monroy, Valentina Lopez, Amanda S., Susana Rial, Jackie Luz, Mari Gajial, Jessica Monroy, ya la saludé. Sanda Manik, Joana Márquez, Violeta Natalie, Irma S., Mari Morquecho, and Shabbat Shalom to the brothers who greet us from Facebook and those who will listen to the recording. Thank you for being here in this time of study, and thank you for your trust in practicing with us. With the favor of the Eternal, we will have a live broadcast every first Shabbat of each new biblical month. For now, we have already started the 8th month of the biblical calendar. How was your time in Sukkot, little friends? Did you see the premieres of each day of Sukkot? We hope it has been a blessing for you, and let us review the great teachings with the activities, and you can share them with us. You can contact us on the social media of Facebook, Instagram, and on the website www.cielosnuevosytierranueva.org. Also, our contact number on WhatsApp and Telegram, so that you can send us your photos and videos. Tell us from which country or city you see us. Our number is +52 33 282 49185. Well, little friends, in today's delivery, we will see how the Eternal tests Abraham, Sarah's death. Abraham requests to his servant Eliezer to find a wife for Yitzhak. We will also see how Abraham dies, and we will conclude by seeing the descendants of Ishmael. Now we will begin with our prayer before our study. Go ahead, Edeline.
Sí, hermano, yo oro. And let's continue with the prayer, little friends. Avinu Shabashamayim, our Father who lives in the highest, we thank you for this day that you give us to learn more about your instruction. I pray for the brothers and sisters who accompany us to learn more about the Torah. Thank you for the study you give us. All in the merits of Yeshua, amen. Go ahead, Samuel.
Shalom, dear friends, and thanks, Angie, for prayer. My name is Samuel, and today we're going to learn about the great mystery in the life of Yitzhak, the prophetic shadow that he left to his people so that they would know his plan of salvation, based on the book of Bereshit, chapter 22. Let us remember that in the previous delivery, we saw the fulfillment of the promise that the Father had given Abraham that he will have descendants, a promise fulfilled throughout the lives of Yitzhak. Now, in Bereshit chapter 22, from verses 1 to 6, it tells us that the Eternal asked Abraham to take his son, his only son, to Mount Moriah. We know he was not the only one because he had Ishmael, but the phrase only son let us see that something was being announced. The Eternal asked him to offer his son as a burnt offering for him, and Abraham does not hesitate in giving Yitzhak to him. Arriving there on the third day, Abraham goes up the mountain with Yitzhak and puts the wood on him. Abraham obeys because he knows that the Eternal could bring him back from the dead. Dear friends, through this portion we can again see Abraham's obedience towards the Eternal because he did not question the request that the Father had given him. We understand that Abraham represents the Eternal Father who gives his only Son to die for many, and that he makes him return on the day of the resurrection. Read in verse 5 that Abraham says, back to live Yitzhak. In verse 6, we read that Abraham put the wood of the burnt offering on Yitzhak, so we can deduce that Yitzhak was no longer a child, hence he would not have been able to carry the wood that was required, and it was not suitable either, since we know that those who offered children as sacrifice were the Canaanites. So on the one hand, we see that just as this had to carry the wood for the burnt offering, Yeshua also carried the wood where he was going to be sacrificed, just as Yeshua volunteered before the Father. So it had to have been with Yitzhak. Let us remember that Abraham was already an old man and was not going to force his son to give up his life. So we understand that Yitzhak had also learned to trust in the mighty one of his father. Next, we read from verse 7 to 14 that Yitzhak had doubts about who will be the burnt offering, and Abraham replied that the Eternal will provide it. Then the angel of the Eternal told him not to extend his hand against his son, since he had already proven that he feared the Almighty because he did not refuse his only son. Then Abraham looked towards a nearby bush and saw a ram among its branches and knew that it was to be offered as a burnt offering. And Abraham called the name of that place one of the offering, one of the mountain Adonai will provide. However, the prophecy pointed to a lamb and not a ram. The Eternal provided the ram as a substitute for Yitzhak, but Abraham knew that the Eternal will provide a lamb, the perfect lamb that is Yeshua, our Messiah. Well, dear friends, we can summarize this prophetic shadow as follows. 1. Abraham must sacrifice his only son. The Eternal decides to sacrifice his only son. 2. On the third day, they arrived at the place of sacrifice. Yeshua was sacrificed, and after 3 days, he was raised alive. 3. Yitzhak had to carry his own firewood to be sacrificed. Yeshua had to carry his wood to be sacrificed. 4. Yitzhak wanted to know where the lamb was for the sacrifice, and Abraham told him that the Eternal was going to provide it. The Eternal provided the sacrificial lamb, for Yeshua is the lamb that takes away the sin of the world. The ram was a substitute for Yitzhak. Yeshua was a substitute to redeem us. Well, dear friends, isn't it surprising to see how the Father was manifested since ancient times, the way in which he will carry out the plan of salvation for humanity? For him, nothing is by chance, nor does it occur to him suddenly. He is perfect. After this, we see how the Eternal, through his messenger, confirms his promise to multiply his offspring and to bless them. That is where we, the nations, come in, if we have the faith of Abraham and the obedience that this entails. To finish, we see from verse 20 to 24 the offspring of his brother Nahor, where Ribkah will come from, the one who will be the Yitzhak wife. Well, dear friends, here's my little manna for today. Have a blessed Shabbat day.
We are going to continue with Bereshit 24 from verses 1 to 27, in which we are going to learn that Abraham, as a faithful servant of the Father, prevents Yitzhak from taking an unsuitable wife and looks for the right wife for him. At the beginning of the chapter, we read that Abraham was already very old, and that the Eternal had blessed him in everything. Then Abraham calls his servant Eliezer, who was very trustworthy to him, and they made a pact in which Abraham gives him the responsibility of finding a wife from his kindred for Isaac, because Abraham did not want his son to marry a Canaanite woman. Eliezer tells him, "Perhaps the maiden will not want to come with me to this land. Will I take your son to the land where you came from?" Abraham told him, "No, because the Eternal had sworn to him, saying, 'To your offspring I will give this land.'" He was very clear about the promise of the promised land, and because of his faith, Abraham knew that the Eternal would guide his servant so that he would know who Isaac's wife would be, and she had to be of a clean lineage. Little friends, we see that Abraham did not want Yitzhak to marry a Canaanite woman because Yitzhak was the son of the promise. Then Eliezer enters into a covenant with Abraham by putting his hand under the thigh, which means that he would take care of his offspring, Yitzhak, and he took 10 camels and many gifts and went to the land of Abraham, Mesopotamia, to the city of Nahor. When Eliezer arrived, his camels knelt down to rest and drink water at a well outside the city where the maidens went to draw water. We see that the servant cries out to the Eternal to reveal who would be the chosen wife for Isaac. The sign he asked for was for the maiden not to refuse and offer to give water to his camels. And it came to pass that before he finished praying, Ribkah, a very beautiful maiden, daughter of Bethuel, came out with her pitcher on her shoulder. Because of her noble, generous, and kind character, she offered to give Eliezer a drink first, and then his camels. Can you imagine, little friends, how much water Ribkah had to get to give Eliezer's 10 camels a drink? It is known that a thirsty camel can drink 135 liters of water in just 13 minutes. No doubt Ribkah had to do a lot of work, but she wanted to do it because she was a very helpful maiden. We see that Eliezer was watching her intently. Ribkah became known by her fruits, and by her fruits he recognized her and knew that she would be Yitzhak's wife. When the camels finished drinking, Eliezer gave Ribkah some gifts: a gold earring that weighed half a shekel and 2 bracelets that weighed 10. And then he asked her, "Whose daughter are you?" And she answered, "I am the daughter of Bethuel, son of Milcah, whom she gave birth to Nahor," and added, "In our house there is a lot of straw and fodder, and there is room to spend the night." Then Eliezer exalted and blessed the Eternal for having guided him to the right woman for Yitzhak. This is my little manna for today, little friends. Go ahead, Haim.
Thanks, Angie. Thanks, Angie. Shalom, little friends. Chaim greets you. Let's continue with the chapter 24. Then Rivka immediately ran to tell everything that had happened at her mother's house. Her brother Laban welcomes Eliezer and gives him food. But Eliezer does not sit down to eat, because, being a faithful servant, he had the urge to fulfill the purpose of his visit, because at this point, with everything that had happened, the answer to this prayer, the humility, the maturity, and the service that Rivka offered, the knowledge that the family was Abraham's kindred, the servant Eliezer feels safe that Rivka was Yitzhak's future wife. Receiving a positive response from Rivka's family, the servant rejoices, thanks, sits down at the table and rejoices together with the family. But the next day, Laban and her mother wanted to delay Rivka's departure. And here we see her mature and confident attitude when she did not hesitate before the call she had before her future husband. We read in Genesis 24:58, and they called Rebekah and said to her, "Will you go with this man?" And she replied, "Yes, I will go." Here we have a great teaching, my friends, and it is that before the Eternal's call to obey His commandments, we should not hesitate or doubt, but remain safe and confident that His will is always good for our lives. And finally, we see that when Rivka arrives and meets her future husband, she shows modesty by covering her beauty, because what is external is not the most important, but what we do in the eyes of the Eternal, our behavior and disobedience. After saying goodbye and her parents blessing her, we see that Eliezer, Rivka, and those who come with him depart back to the land of the Negev, where Isaac was patiently waiting, because at that moment we read in verses 62 to 63 that Isaac was returning from a well, and he was stopping to meditate in the field at sunset, when he just saw Eliezer's camels coming with Rivka and his servants. Eliezer, he had already arrived, and it was time for Rivka to meet him. Then Rivka saw him in the distance, and got off the camel, and asked Eliezer who was that person who was approaching, and telling him that it was Yitzhak, she covered her face with her veil, and approached him. In verse 67, they received her in their tent, and Yitzhak took her as his wife, and loved her very much. Moreover, it comforted him after his mother's death, and that follows we will see next. So this has been my little manna for today. Until next time. Go ahead, Tito.
Thank you, my brother Yuel. Shalom, little friends. My name is Tito, and we are going to continue with the next portion of Bereshit, chapter 25, verses 1 to 11, that says, Abraham remarried a woman named Keturah. She gave birth to Zimram, Jokshan, Medan, Madian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan was the father of Sheba and Dedan. The descendants of Dedan were Ashiram, Letisham, and Lemuel. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanok, Abiah, and Edelah. All of them were descendants of Abraham through Keturah. The Eternal had promised Abraham that he would be called father of multitudes, and boy, he was going to fulfill it. That's why he allowed him in his last year to rejoin his life to this new woman. And in this way, he was going to be able to multiply even more. His children then remembered that Abraham's firstborn was Ishmael, and the second son was Isaac, and Zimran came afterwards, followed by Jokshan, Medan, Madian, Ishbak, and Shua. In total we count 8 names of the sons of Abraham. But Abraham gave everything he owned to his son Isaac. Yet before he died, he gave gifts to the children of his concubines and separated them from his son Isaac, sending them to a land in the east. Isaac was the son of the promise, and Abraham knew it. He loved all his children and sought them out with many goods. However, he gave Isaac everything he had. Everything! This is a shadow that the Eternal Father would give all the things to Yeshua, the Messiah, for being the beloved Son. Little friends, the Eternal Father had promised that if we are obedient to His commandments, He will give us heavenly gifts. Yeshua taught this in Matthew chapter 7, verse 11. If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts to your children, how much more will the Father in the heaven give good things to those who ask Him? Little friends, we must strive to be true sons of Elohim so that our lives can be very pleasant and obedient before Abraham. No, very pleasant before him. Just as Isaac, who was also pleasant and obedient before Abraham. Let's continue reading. Abraham lived to 175 years old and died in good old age. After a long and fulfilling life, he breathed his last breath and was renewed with his ancestors. His son Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Mepelach, near Mamre, in the field of Ephron, son of Zonar, the Hittite. That was the field that Abraham bought from the Hittites, and where he had buried his wife. Abraham was joined to his wife Sarah and the same place where he himself buried her. Isaac and Ishmael were as good brothers, joined together to bury their father. In the same place later, all the patriarchs and matriarchs of the people of Israel would be buried. Abraham was a very obedient man. That's why the Eternal allowed him to die old. His life is an example of faith for us, little friends, to be faithful to our Heavenly Father. After Abraham's death, the Eternal blessed his son Isaac, who settled near Lahario, near the Negev. No, in the Negev. And, well, finally, the Eternal saw good for Isaac. This is my little manna for today, little friends. Go ahead, Joan.
Thank you, Tito. Shalom, little friends. Juan greets you. Now we are going to learn about the descendants of Ishmael, which we see in Bereshit chapter 25, verse 12 to 18. Little friends, do you remember who Ishmael was? That's right. Ishmael was the son of Abraham that he had with Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's servant. Ishmael had 12 children, and these were their names:
which are named according to their birth. The firstborn of Ishmael was called Nebayat, then Kedar, then Adbeel, then Mibsam, then Mishma, then Dama, then Massa, then Hadad, then Timah, then Jeter, Naphish, and Kedem. All of them were the sons of Ishmael by their names and places where they lived. As we see, little friends, Ishmael was not forgotten. He was a son of Abraham who was recognized by the Eternal because Abraham prayed for him when he said it was good that Ishmael was before the Eternal. Then the angel of the Almighty tells him, I am also going to bless Ishmael. He gave him 12 princes and made him a great nation, as the Eternal had told Abraham that he would make a great nation out of the son of the maidservant. That is why in the Torah, Ishmael is remembered along with his descendants for being Abraham's lineage. And Ishmael was 137 years old when he died. The Eternal Father blessed him with many years of life. And this is my little manna of today. Go ahead, Anthony.
Brief conclusion. Little friends, let's summarize the important parts of this portion. Yitzhak is the shadow of Yeshua, the Messiah. Yitzhak represents Yeshua because he is called the only son who the Father loves and has to sacrifice him. Although Yitzhak is not sacrificed since a ram is provided for it, the Eternal would provide a lamb, which is Yeshua. Sarah lives the promise fulfilled. And although she has Yitzhak at the age of 90 years old, she still lives 37 more years, enough to see her son grow up. We also learned that Abraham makes concrete deals to make sure to buy a property and not receive it as a gift from strangers, but does his best not to deliver his son to the Canaanites. But his relatives, Rivka represents Ishmael, a wife who represents Israel, a wife whom Yeshua acquires. Rivka does not hesitate to go to where his Lord is leaving her relatives. This represents the believers who follow the Messiah regardless of their family. Abraham, even though he became old as more descendants, where many people would come from the Eternal, fulfill his promise about Ishmael by giving him 12 sons, from which 12 princesses would come. Little friends, let's continue studying the Father's instruction to see the Messiah in it and to know how to walk in obedience for consecration for the service of the Eternal. To review this delivery, we have an activity. Remember that we will leave in the description box down below the link to a PDF with the instructions so you can complete it with the help of mom and dad. Don't forget to share your photos and videos of the process and its results. Little friends, we are now going to say goodbye. Today we have finished the live broadcast in English, but remember to be attentive for our next delivery of My Little Manna. Well, it's Shabbat, a day of rest, and that we can dedicate to the study of the Torah.
The children come when they come to Him. With the Master Yeshua we are going to learn. The children come when they come to Him, blowing shofar in obedience to Him. For the kingdom of the heavens for the children's is. Let's to sing, let's to sing, let's to sing to Adonai. Let's to serve, and we're not Elohim. It's no right to walk and never depart. To learn since a child and never to lose my faith. For the kingdom of the heavens for the children's is. Children come and come to Him. The Master Yeshua we are going to learn. The children come and come to Him, blowing shofar in obedience to Him. For the kingdom of the heavens for the children's is. Let's to sing, let's to sing, let's to sing to Adonai.